Day after day, there are reports that the Walt Disney World Resort theme parks are hitting capacity. Attendance must be through the roof. Ladies and gentlemen, what if we told you, though, that it might be artificial? What if we told you that the crowds are not real? What if we told you that there's a way to know it? And it has to do with the water parks. Hello, folks. Welcome back to the Pro Channel. We are, as always, overjoyed that you have elected to spend time with us. And one of the responsibilities we feel when you do so is to provide you with high quality and truthful content, explaining entertainment, keeping you ahead of the culture curve. Folks, we've made an audacious claim today that Disney attendance is down, even despite the fact that you look at photos and you see crowds everywhere, even despite the fact there are headlines saying that Disney World is extremely crowded. So how can it possibly be that we would make this claim? Well, we would say to you to watch this video in its entirety and make your own call once you have seen what we present. To help us out with this endeavor is Jonas J. Campbell, investigative reporter for ThatParkPlace.com. Jonas, welcome back.
So good to be here, and so looking forward to seeing that boat on top of Splash Mountain. Sorry, Tiana's Bayou Adventure that they promised that they would put on top of Tiana's Bayou Adventure. Is that what we're talking about
No,
today?
the only boat you will get today, Jonas, is the Miss Tilly sitting on top of Mount Mayday, and that is at Typhoon Lagoon, which I think is the best of the two water parks at the Walt Disney World Resort, although I do have a fondness for Blizzard Beach. It is a much smaller water park, and I don't think that it has as good a wave pool. But folks, you be the judge of that. If you've attended both, let us know in the comments down below which one you prefer. But the secret is out, Jonas. The info that we know based on the water parks tells the truth of what's really going on at Walt Disney World. So this is an article that I wrote a few days ago. It's called Disney World Water Parks Reveal Hidden Capacity and Attendance Issues for Major Theme Parks. Let me read this, and I cannot wait for your take on this. Disney World is currently designed to make you feel it's crowded. A crowded park is a park where you'll pay to skip lines. A crowded park keeps headlines happy towards your future. So over the last decade, nearly every change has been to reduce capacity, reduce attractions, reduce ride length, etc. They want guests in the retail spaces, walking always, buying food hot and thirsty. Disney has gone to such lengths as to artificially limit the number of guests in the park. But why all this effort? Well, years ago, Disney determined that they could make far more money from rarely attending guests ready to spend big money. The more naive they were, when they arrived, the easier it might be to get dollars out of their wallets. And poor word of mouth is unlikely to shrink customers enough to go under these arbitrary capacity limits that Disney is using. But, and here's the big thing, Jonas, there are so many photos. And if you go to the parks, they feel so crowded. So how can it possibly be? Are we insane? Are we crazy? Well, here's what you need to take into account. The Walt Disney World Resort was once upon a time so crowded that they needed to have both water parks open almost all year round. They would take the water parks down, each one of them for 2 months, so that there was always one open, but for 2 months, one of them would be under refurbishment. Okay, so that they could clean them and get all the pumps working and all of that. Today, the water parks are only available one at a time. So for a few months in the winter, Blizzard Beach is it. The rest of the year, it's Typhoon Lagoon. And yet, despite that, Jonas, the water parks are very seldomly at capacity. So here's the paragraph on this. How did we go from a water park situation for decades in which both water parks were open and running at capacity to a world in which one water park is open and halfway filled with guests? Did water parks suddenly lose all interest from families? Of course not. Whereas the major theme parks were reduced in capacity and quietly given artificial limits on guest numbers, the water parks remain the same as always, but with lesser numbers visiting Disney World. The water parks give away the lower number in visceral ways that the other theme parks are designed to obfuscate, to hide. And I'll give you the example, Jonas. Folks, go read this article, the rest of it. Very interesting, at least I think it is. I wrote it. But Jonas, the other way you can find this is for those who have gone to Disney for any length of time. You know what a crowded parking lot looks like, and you know what a sparse parking lot looks like. I'm here to tell you that the parking lot might be half full or 3/4 full, and the parks themselves will feel absolutely like they are just busting at the seams with guests. And what has happened is, let's take Epcot, for example, Jonas. What they do is, okay, so you take out Wonders of Life Pavilion, okay? So it's no longer available. It's there, but you can't use it. There's nothing there, right? That's where Body Wars was. That's where other things were. It used to be used as a festival area. They don't use it. All right? You take that out. Let's take the Imagination Pavilion, okay? Where Journey of Imagination used to be a very popular ride. Now that ride is extremely poorly received. And then you have a little movie theater where instead of Honey, I Shrunk the Audience, now it plays Pixar short films that are available on your TV at home. So that doesn't draw much of a crowd, okay? So again, that's space that's just throwaway. And what happens is, and I could keep going on all the ways that they have managed to reduce things to do, that results in people being out and about, milling about, trying to find something to do. And it's turned the parks into kind of pedestrian malls instead of the theme parks they once were. Jonas, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, of course, that's always been the accusation at Epcot, especially in the evenings, that it turns into a local bar more than it does a theme park, which is of course a tragedy for one of the greatest theme parks that has ever existed on the planet. Um, First of all, I want to say that you make a very good point, and that's the kind of expert analysis that we've come to expect from Pro and that.
Well, how can the water parks be like they are unless there's less people at the resort? There's no way for you.
Agreed.
It's just impossible.
Agreed. And the water parks were an excellent perk on certain tickets, but yeah, it used to be that they wanted to get you there and they wanted to keep you there a long time. The magical express that kept you in the bubble, and now it seems like they just want to nickel and dime people as much as they can. Of course, there's that mention of Genie Plus. You can't do Genie Plus at a water park. It just right. doesn't work. There's too many phones that aren't waterproof. And
so let's briefly, Jonas, explain how Genie Plus makes parks seem very crowded. Here's the synopsis, folks. Here's the mechanics of it. The standby line doesn't hardly move because they send Genie Plus guests because they're paying straight on the ride. So the standby line is literally stand by, not walk by, stand by. So you stand there. It fills that queue up and it just doesn't move. And it takes forever and you are impatiently stuck. But everybody who bought Genie Plus, they're not in line. So you've got folks who are just standing, and then you have folks who are out in the parks looking for something to do because there's nothing to do until they get their next Genie Plus. Now, Jonas, that was not the case back when they had the original Fast Pass because everybody received the Fast Pass, and it was a system that gave you 3 or 4 Fast Passes a day, but that kept everything moving. Because of this system where the paid-to-play guests, right, the upper class guests get to just skip the line completely, then you have a system by which and Disney does this on purpose. Those with the most money do the most walking around all the retail and shops and restaurants, and those with the least money stand stationary in line.
I personally, and this is something that Bob Chapek pushed for. He pointed this out to shareholders on several calls that when they have fewer people in those parks, what he didn't say is if the parks have less people in them, then they spend more money. What he didn't say was if we can reduce the capacity and have fewer annual pass holders in the parks, those people who are there for their once in a lifetime trip are more likely to spend money because they are in a situation that they know that they won't be repeating this trip. And so they're more likely to drop more in a retail space. They're more likely to drop more on Disney Plus because, oh, well, I'm only going to be here one time. Therefore, I need to be making this bet against myself that I'm going to actually get in and do this ride. That's why they monetize those lottery rides and say, well, if you want to get on one of these lottery rides, then go ahead and pay your lightning lane, your individual lightning lane, and then you can guarantee your spot here. It's this kind of dastardly way of doing e-ticket without doing e-ticket. We don't all get them for just going in the park for a low rate. The rate to get into the park itself is already incredibly high, and now you also have to pay to play. I hate it. I dislike it so much. It reminds me of a dirty state fair to remind people of what Walt Disney was taking a stand against when he made his nice park over there.
Well, the appropriate way to do this is to charge. Okay, so let's give a correction, right? This is the way they could do it but it doesn't make them as much money. But anyway, we could get into staffing issues and all kinds of stuff about why Disney doesn't do it the right way. Long term, doing the right thing would be tremendously better. Short term, which is all they care about right now, they lose a little. But anyway, the way they could do this is they go back to the system of, if you stay at a hotel, or put an or here, you're an annual pass holder, or you buy a premium ticket, okay? Open it up to people who are not part of the hotels. But those three, right? Premium tickets that don't exist right now, but invent it. Premium tickets, hotel goers, and AP holders. You get extra magic hours, okay? Throw an extra 2 hours on the top or at the end, whatever. Do that again, and bingo, bango, bongo. You would fix this problem. Folks who want to spend more would get to ride more rides, but it would not come at the inconvenience of the standard guest who can only afford, which is already expensive, to spend $1,000 to get their family in for a day, okay? I mean, the average guest is still spending $1,000. It's just they're not spending $1,500. Oh, sorry.
Well, of course, that also reduces the tension of the average person. Once you get into that park, once you enter those turnstiles, it needs to be the same experience for a majority of people, except for that 1% that it's in the best interests of the park to keep them off on their own. Okay, you can have your $3,000 a day tour guides. Those are fine because most people don't ever see them in the crowds. You can have your roped off areas that are on the balconies, I'll say, balcony areas for fireworks viewing. But this whole idea of monetizing these parks in a way that makes it very clear to the average guest that you have haves and have nots, that's not good. That is the opposite of what you need to be doing at these parks. You are not the lifestyle brand. You don't need the status symbol being your Disney vacation. You need this to be an all-American experience, or all global, if that would appeal to the Bob Iger types.
And making your parks purposefully inefficient and hindering folks is not the way to long-term sustain these parks at all. And it is also a very stupid idea to use the parks as a slush fund to pay off all the stuff you're doing in China because you believe one day off in the horizon, Bob Iger's biggest legacy will be that he made the Walt Disney World of China. And it makes so much money because of China. Stop that, okay?
Just like Walt would have wanted.
Yeah, just like Walt would have wanted. Apple pie, I tell you. Apple pie and wontons. But Disney World water parks, that's where we know, folks. It's the way that you can know that there are not crowds like what you once saw. It's a mirage because they are purposefully making the parks as inefficient as possible to the detriment of your guest experience. And they don't care because the capacity limits are low enough that they'll just milk you for every dollar and dime you have. And they know that they can at least get enough people in there to meet those capacity limits as low as they are. It is a fleecing operation, in my opinion. That's why Disney World was recently named the biggest ripoff in North America by a study by casino.com. But the water parks show that attendance is down because they cannot even keep 2 water parks open at once. This was never a question in the past. They had 2 water parks open at capacity in the summer. Nowadays, they can't even get close to capacity with 1 water park. It's a real problem. It really shows what's going on here. And, Hollywood Studios is operating with anywhere from 12 to 17 total attractions for the entire day. When you look at Dollywood, for example, what is it, 50 to 70 attractions, Jonas, at Dollywood?
I think it's 45 on a slow day and closer to 60 on a day when everything is up and running.
Right, and 12 to 17 at Hollywood Studios, and you all figure out why that is. It's totally purposeful, but you get the idea. Jonas, final thoughts on this one before we wrap up?
I think that they need to go ahead and finish what they started and put one of those big old boats on top of Tiana's Bayou Adventure. But as far as this particular issue goes, I would recommend the video where me, and Joshua Harris talk about what they could do to improve the parks. And we talked about putting most of that money that they put in that $60 billion, sorry, actually $30 billion, and put it towards smaller rides that aren't flashy and actually getting people off of the walkways there. Have a better experience for everybody at maybe the cost of your becoming a high-end target that's very very themed to IPs you happen to already own. I just think this is so cringy and so greedy, and it's just kind of gross to know that they could make a good experience, but instead they would like to sell you more Dooney and Burke bags.
Well, and if they increase the capacity at the domestic parks, and if they did what we're talking about, then long term, they would make huge, huge sums of money because the demand is there. People want to go back to what they remember. But Disney wants to chase after the 400,000 and up annual salary global elites, and they want to chase after Chinese money. That's what Disney's after. And I think it's a failed experiment. I think long term, this is really, really stupid. But that's what I think. Folks, if you want to see our positive vision for Disney parks, check out the playlist Fixing Disney. We're adding to it each week, talking about how you could make the parks wonderful once more. We started with Animal Kingdom. We've got another one coming up. Members of the channel voted on which one is coming up. So check that out as soon as it happens. Also, folks, it's your turn. Like, share, subscribe, click it, stick it to the algorithms, it's the notification bell, and drop a comment down below. We need to know which one's better, Typhoon Lagoon or Blizzard Beach. And yes, if you're so inclined, River Country is still available to you if you'd like to say, it was the best ever. You whippersnappers don't even remember. All right, folks, that's it for us today. Like, share, subscribe. And folks, wherever you are and whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.